how can you simultaneously depict the mystery and the majesty of the Lord's Nativity in one short hymn? We will find out in this video. Hi, I'm Dr. Doug Pugh, and today I'm reviewing hymn 1203 from the newly released LDS Hymnal selections. It is entitled, What Child Is This? Of course, most of us know this famous Christmas carol. It's a text by William Chatterton Dix, set to a 16th century English melody, arranged and harmonized by the English composer John Stainer. It is so lovely to have another minor key hymn in our hymnal, especially one that is such a strong fence sitter between the polarities of minor and major. We're going to explore these little packets of light John Stainer finds within the minor key structure, along with other excellent writing techniques. Let's get started. Technique 1, lyrical melodies born from boring arpeggios. The melody of What Child Is This? It's a beautiful lyrical tune, but if you break it down, it's really built on simple arpeggios. We're in the key of E minor, and you can see from the very beginning, I've highlighted in blue here, we focus almost every measure around a triad. So the first measure, see how that's the E minor triad? And then we go to the D major triad, then we go to a C major, and then B major. The whole thing is built on triads. This is a really helpful thing to remember when you're struggling to write a melody. If you're thinking, gosh, I don't know where to go, I don't know what note to do next, it can be a great default to go back to the chords you're using, outline them, arpeggiate them, and then find little ways of having little passing tones and little neighbor tones between and around the notes of the triad. It's a great way to write a melody. It may not be the most lyrical melody ever, but this is a very famous melody, and the whole thing is built on triads. As you continue, you see the same thing. The second phrase is about the same as the first. Then down here at measure 9, when we start at the top, see that D major triad coming down, D, A, F sharp, D. Straight down the D major triad. We get that same C major triad, and then the same B major triad, and then it happens again. So this is a very triadic melody, yet still quite lyrical. So once again, if you're struggling to figure out how to get your melody to work, default back to the chords you're thinking of using, outline them with an arpeggio, and then see if you can lyricize that arpeggio by filling in the gaps, finding notes around the arpeggio to help you write your melody. Technique 2, Regal rollicking rhythms. In 6/8 time, like we are here in What Child Is This?, it's very common to create a rocking kind of a feel. This is done with the rhythm quarter, eighth quarter, eighth quarter, eighth quarter, and sometimes within the eighth quarter you get 3 eighths in a row, quarter, eighth quarter, eighth. Sorry, getting my quarters and my eighths mixed. But ta-da-da-dee-da-dee-da-da-da. This makes for a nice kind of mother rocking the baby lullaby sort of a feel, which is very appropriate here for a Christmas carol about the child who was born. But we don't want to just have a lullaby in this particular hymn, because the text celebrates the coming of the Lord. This is the Christ child. So in addition to the lullaby feel, the composer of the original tune, which who knows who it was because it's an old English melody, added this dotted eighth, 16th, eighth rhythm, which you can see throughout. It's this rhythm here. And sometimes we even get 2 in a row like we do down here. So we get a mixture of quarter, eighth, quarter, eighth, quarter, eighth with tum, ta-ta, tum, ta-ta, tum. That tum, ta-ta, dotted eighth, 16th, eighth, that has a regalness to it. In old Baroque music in the late 1600s and early 1700s, it was very common when depicting royalty or composing music for the royalty, which happened a lot because composers had royal patrons. They would use this dotted rhythm, tum, ta-tum, 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 ta-tum. It was a very regal sort of a thing. So that's what's being added here. We get the lullaby rhythm of the quarter eighth mixed with the royalty rhythm, tum, ta-tum, tum, ta-tum, tum. Anytime you add that dotted eighth 16th, even inside of a 6/8 construct, it adds this sense of regalness or royalty or majesty. So it's a very interesting combination of rhythms that help to depict the duality in this hymn, the lullaby for the baby and the regalness of the Master come to save us. Technique 3, filling somber scenes with joy. One of the reasons I love minor key hymns so much is it's so easy to slip back and forth between a minor tonal center and a major tonal center. Now, those tonal centers are not around the same note. They're around different notes in the scale. For example, at the start of this hymn, we are definitely circling around the tonal center of E. A child, okay, firmly in E minor. But by halfway through the first full bar, we're already shifting towards G major, which is the relative major of E minor. So by the word this, we get a sense of, oh, wait a minute, we're in G major? And this D chord is the 5 of G, and then we get D again, and D again. So it's almost like, whoa, suddenly we're circling around the tonic of G with its dominant, the D chord, but then we go right back to E minor here. Super quick. It's like a turn of a dime. We get minor, major, back to minor. Okay, and then firmly minor. We confirm that, yes, we are in fact in a minor key because we get a cadence in E minor in bar 4. It's a half cadence, but then it turns back around and goes to the 1, the minor 1. We pause on 5, B, D sharp, F sharp, and then we go back into the 1 to pick up to measure 5. So you see how easy that slips from 1 to major 3, and major 3 happens to be the relative major. And it just makes this kind of somber nativity scene filled with joy in a turn of a dime way from one beat to the next. We get major and minor. It's a great way to use minor key harmonies. Technique 4, Shepherd's Salvation Progression. After the first half of the hymn, we've now totally solidified that we're in E minor. We've had 2 strong cadences in E minor with a nice big B7 to E minor. No question, we are in E minor, despite his little shifts into the relative major in between those bookended, well, not really bookended, but sort of punctuation mark cadences, okay? But now, in the second half, a little something fresh happens. Again, we've just tonicized E minor very clearly. Whoops, I'm looking for my highlighter. There it is, right here. But then in the next measure, we play a 5 chord, but this 5 chord does not have a D sharp. Up to this point, the 5 chord has been B, D sharp, F sharp, but now suddenly we're going to a B minor. Like, what? Well, how does that work? Luckily, because B and E are a fifth apart, it's easy to slip mode mixture in from major to minor around those tonic and dominant centers. But what's really happening here is, like before, when we slipped into G major, we're now slipping into D major. So what happens is this is Christ ends up sounding like a plagal progression in the key of D, where this chord, the B minor, is acting like a 6th chord, and then this chord is acting like a 4 chord that goes to 1. In D major, that would just be 6, 4, 1, which is a great plagal cadence. Plagal is the 4-1 cadence. It's connoted as the sort of the shepherd-like pastoral, out in the fields kind of a thing, which, hey, this is pastoral, right? The lamb is born with sheep and shepherds all around. This is Christ. So we get a plagal cadence during this pastoral scene, but not in the key center of E minor. We shift to the key center of D major, which is a whole step below E major, and we get there through the pivot of the E minor. Then we take the 5th of E minor, and instead of playing it as major, we play it as minor, and it goes functionally as if it were 6, 4, 1. But does it stay in D? No. Right away it turns back around and we get back to E minor. And we even have that nice strong 5 chord with D sharp in E minor. But then, because we can't help it, we do the same thing again. And we get that nice little pastoral progression in the key of D, which then, once again, turns back around and ends in E minor. These are examples of what I said at the beginning, how Stainer finds these little packets of major light inside of the construct of the minor key. To zoom out, what he's done is he's taken our E minor key center and then he's shifted it to 2 chords in the E minor scale that are major chords. The 3 chord, G, B, D, and the 7 chord, D, F sharp, A. So we have E minor, G major, D major, back to E minor. It's a really nice way of circling through some different chords that are not on the normal sort of harmonic progression way of thinking about writing chord progressions, but they totally work because minor keys are much more loose in their rigidity of where the chords should go. Slip into that relative major very easily, which is G major, and then we slip to the dominant of that relative major, which is the 7 chord, and then back to E minor. A little more advanced, perhaps, this idea, but boy, is it nice. So if you're writing in a minor key and you want to add some light to it, consider shifting your tonal center temporarily to the major 3 chord or the major 7 chord. You could also go to the major 6 chord. That would work. Doesn't happen in this piece, but those major chords within E minor can become tonal centers for a bar or two that can then slip right back to the original tonic. And that is what's happening here. Technique 5, strongest minor key cadence. At the end of this first phrase, we get a very strong minor cadence, which helps to solidify the fact that we are, in fact, in the key of E minor. As we've mentioned just recently, this hymn slips into the relative major of G major and slips into the 5 of the relative major, D major, very easily. So how do we signal to the listener that we're not actually changing keys, we're just spending a little time in this major tonal center, but we're still surely and firmly in the key of E minor? Well, we do it, in this case, Stainer, the composer, does it with a very specific cadence. It's called a Phrygian half cadence. Phrygian is the name of a mode, which is a type of scale, and the key element in that mode is the downward resolving half step. So we often hear this mode like this. Hear that half step? That half step between the second scale degree and the first scale degree, that is the Phrygian half step. Okay? So when you take, like here on what I've highlighted in blue, on Mary's lap is sleeping, you've heard this a million times. 1, 4, 6, first inversion, A, C, E. Now the C goes down by a half step to B in the 5 chord. So that move, 1, minor 4 in first inversion, has to be in first inversion, so we get C in the bass, and then 5. So we have the first scale degree in the bass on Mary, then we have the lowered 6th scale degree, which then goes to a half step to the 5th scale degree, and that is the definition of a Phrygian half cadence. It highlights that important half step in minor keys, the half step between the flat 6 and the 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. In minor, the 6 is just a half step from the 5, and it is like one of the identifying factors of minor keys. So the composer uses that Phrygian half cadence on purpose because he slipped into the relative major, highlights the major 3 chord and the major 7th chord, which makes it sound like we're going to modulate to another key, but he wraps it right back around and makes sure that you hear that we're still in E minor by using this strongest of minor key cadences, the Phrygian half cadence. And then he does it again. So he, down here, when we tonicize the 7 chord, starting in measure 9, we get another Phrygian half cadence right down here. Okay, you see the bass goes 1, 6, 5. And this is after we've done the move to D major. 1. Da, da, da. This time, instead of using minor 4, he adds the F sharp, which is technically a 2 half diminished 4, 3 to 6 to 5. Same concept though. It's still a Phrygian half cadence because we get the first scale degree, flat 6 scale degree, 5th scale degree. He just freshens it up by using a couple of different chord tones above that bass line, which gives us the 2 half diminished and the 6 instead of the minor 4 first inversion that we saw before. But that's not the point. The point is he tethers us back to E minor, even when we've gone off path a little bit to G major and D major. He pulls us back in. He reins us in with a Phrygian half cadence in E minor, which signals, yes, we are most definitely still in E minor. So if you're writing in minor keys and you want to explore these other territories that sound more major and less melancholy, great, do it. But if you're going to stay in that minor key, be sure you tether it back. And a great way to do so is by using the Phrygian half cadence. So what's my opinion of this hymn? I love this Christmas carol. It's a favorite. I love the mixture of the mystery and the majesty that we talked about with these different major key centers and minor key centers all within the construct of a minor key. It's a long overdue addition to our hymnal. I'm so glad we have it. If you'd like to download my complete harmonic analysis, you can do so below this video in the description box. There's a link. It's free. If you enjoyed this video, please support my channel by hitting subscribe and ringing the bell so you won't miss any future videos. In the next video in this series, I'll review the new LDS hymn number 1204, Star Bright.